Yongzheng took a stone and thought carefully and long about where to place it on the board. Just like a real-life war, this game was all about clever strategy. Likewise, sometimes real-life stratagems could also be applied in the game. He wasn't a particularly brilliant Go player, but he wasn't bad at it either, and in the current situation, he could very easily discern his opponent's trap. After deliberating on his next move, he decided that the best option was to play right into it and lay down his stone. As the stone touched the board, his opponent smiled, not knowing that Yongzheng was entirely aware of his plan. China has enjoyed great periods of peace where strategists honed their skills playing Go, but it has also been through great wars, where generals such as Sun Tzu, Zhuge Liang and Cao Cao implemented their tactics in real life and left us great literary pieces of military thought. So join us today as we take a look into some famous real and apocryphal stratagems that are described in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the Sanguozhi. For a taste of real strategies like this, you need to get into some Three Kingdoms action yourself with our sponsor, Infinite Borders. It's a massively multiplayer grand strategy game on PC and mobile, simulating the battles between states, leaders and armies in the Three Kingdoms era, bringing history to life with beautiful art, compelling characters and charming music. While new in the West, it's been around a while in the East, with seasonal updates adding more and more to the game. Their new Conquest season, called All Trades Contention, just released. This update focuses on giving new skills to the characters under your command, and with it, new synergies to use on your economy, army and infrastructure, bringing broader strategies into play as you contend with your rivals. The 5 professions are now at your command: farming and sericulture to improve your land, earthwork to access new resources, military affairs to boost troop recruitment, medical matters to reduce draft times, and wisdom, bringing experience bonuses in combat. Whether you've played before or are just hearing about it, use these new tools to your advantage in the massive long-term wars of Infinite Borders. Get the game for free using our link in the description and try out some of the Three Kingdoms strategies you learned today for real. We will begin our survey of ancient military Chinese strategies with the infamous empty fort Gambit. Listed as 32nd in the classic Chinese essay The 36 Stratagems, and standing out as the writer's personal favorite, the empty fort is a rather famous bluff. Using reverse psychology, a commander who is unable to defend a castle, city, or other fortified position in an orthodox way abandons the defense completely and presents the fort as undefended, in the hopes of making the enemy general suspicious of an ambush and thus causing a retreat. According to the records of the Three Kingdoms, the Sanguozhi, Cao Cao successfully used this trick against Lü Bu in the spring of 195. When Lü Bu attacked Cao Cao's camp in modern-day Shandong with around 10,000 soldiers, Cao Cao had less than 1,000 men available, as the rest of his troops had gone to collect grain. Cao Cao ordered the remaining soldiers to man the walls and even commanded the women to take up guard duties, much to his troops' protests. When Lü Bu arrived and observed his camp, he immediately became suspicious of the few guards. Adding to his concerns were the dike and the deep forest adjacent to Cao Cao's camp that could have easily concealed an ambushing force. Fearing an ambush, Lü Bu said, "Cao Cao is treacherous and we must not fall into his trap," and ordered his army to move 10 li or 5 miles south of Cao Cao's position and set up camp there. The next day, Lü Bu decided to finally assault the camp, but by this time Cao Cao's foraging force had returned, and there was indeed an ambush force hiding in the dike and the forest. Consequently, Lü Bu's force was defeated. Years later, the empty fort was used once more, this time by Zhao Yun against Cao Cao during the Battle of the Han River in 219. Zhao Yun and his men had gone in search of another general of Liu Bei's, Huang Zhong, who had earlier gone to attack Cao Cao's supply train but hadn't returned. Zhao Yun's battle group engaged their adversaries, but finding themselves outnumbered, they were soon forced to retreat with their enemies hot on their tail. Once they reached their camp, Zhang Yi, Zhao Yun's subordinate, wanted to close the gates and try to mount a defense. However, his order was countermanded by his superior, who gave the command for the gates to be kept open, for the war drums to fall silent, and for the flags to be hidden, so as to give the impression of the camp being abandoned. Cao Cao's men, looking at the empty camp, suspected an ambush and retreated. But once they had lowered their guard, Zhao Yun launched a counterattack, his men beating the drums loudly and raining a hail of arrows on the enemy. Cao Cao's troops were caught completely by surprise and disorganized, and they preferred to flee rather than mount any resistance, with many falling to the blades of Zhao Yun's cavalrymen, while others fell into the Han River and drowned. Following this battle, Liu Bei visited the camp, praised Zhao Yun for his bravery and cleverness, and threw a banquet in his honor. In addition to Zhao Yun, Liu Bei had another general who could effectively employ the empty fort tactic, at least according to the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. His name was Zhuge Liang. While Zhuge Liang's story is most likely ahistorical, it is by far the most famous, and to be fair, the most stylish example of the empty fort stratagem being used. In 228, long after both Cao Cao and Liu Bei had passed away and their kingdoms were ruled by their successors, Zhuge Liang launched the first of a series of campaigns that would be known as the Northern Expeditions. Here Zhuge Liang attempted to conquer Chang'an, the old capital of the Qin and Western Han periods, which was now under the control of the Kingdom of Wei. However, his efforts bore no fruit, as his Shu forces were crushed at the Battle of Jieting, exposing Zhuge Liang's position to the enemy, while the main Shu army was fighting far away, with no hope of coming to the rescue in time. With only a handful of soldiers left, Zhuge Liang retreated to the fortress of Xicheng. Here, the master tactician had to play the ultimate bluff against the oncoming Wei troops. He ordered for the gates to be opened, dressed his men as civilians, and commanded them to sweep the streets, while he himself sat on the city's walls and calmly played his guqin. When the equally famous tactician and Wei general Sima Yi saw this image, he immediately became suspicious of an ambush due to Zhuge Liang's reputation in military strategy, and thus ordered his army to turn back. While we are speaking of Zhuge Liang's accomplishments, it would be impossible not to mention another apocryphal trick he pulled, this time against Cao Cao himself. It is here that we move from the empty fort on to the next major strategy, known as borrowing arrows with straw boats. It was the year 208 when the armies of the Three Kingdoms clashed alongside the coast of the Yangtze River in the famous Battle of the Red Cliffs. On one side was Cao Cao, who desired to conquer the land south of the Yangtze, while on the other stood the combined forces of Sun Quan, Liu Bei, and Liu Qi. Zhou Yu, a general and strategist who served under Sun Quan's banner, was able to detect Zhuge Liang's skill in tactics and strategy, and could foresee that he would become a threat to his lord. So he came up with a plan to get rid of him. He asked Zhuge Liang to help him produce 100,000 arrows in preparation for the upcoming battle with Wei's forces. Zhuge Liang confidently proclaimed that he could accomplish this in just 3 days, with Zhou Yu asking him to more or less bet his life on this statement, sure that Zhuge Liang would fail to complete the task in time and thus be executed. Zhuge Liang had a plan of his own, and with the help of Lu Su, another general of Sun Quan, he took 20 large boats and filled them with straw-made figures that resembled soldiers. During the hours before dawn, when thick fog covered the waters, he manned the boats with a handful of men, just enough to maneuver them, and set sail to approach the anchored Wei ships. As they approached the enemy camp, his soldiers began beating the war drums loudly and screaming as if shouting orders for an attack. Cao Cao's men, who came under the impression they were being attacked, rushed to respond and soon rained thousands upon thousands of arrows upon the boats. Due to the fog, they could not determine the attacking force's true size, nor did they know that the figures were made out of straw, so they kept firing. Many arrows fell into the river's waters, but thousands became stuck in the straw figures. When Zhuge Liang felt they had borrowed enough arrows from Cao Cao's archers, he ordered his small fleet to turn back, and indeed, when they reached the shore, they found out they had collected the required amount. Zhuge Liang's head would remain on his shoulders, and the allied forces would be more prepared to face the Wei army. We now take a break from Zhuge Liang's accomplishments and return to the leader of the Kingdom of Wei, Cao Cao, as he pulls off the next strategy in our video, known as Kill with a Borrowed Sword. In late 219, Cao Cao had suffered a great defeat at the Battle of Fancheng by the armies of Liu Bei, which were led by one of the most brilliant generals of the era, a man later deified as the god of war, Guan Yu. Cao Cao wanted to capture Jing province, but was also weary of Guan Yu and his military prowess, so instead of facing his adversary head-on, he opted to pitch another rival against him, Sun Quan. Sun Quan, the king of Wu, had earlier been an ally of Shu, and had fought together with Liu Bei against Cao Cao at the Battle of the Red Cliffs. Yet Guan Yu had recently insulted Sun Quan by refusing a marriage proposal from him, and to add salt to the man's wounds, he raided one of Wu's granaries as his armies were lacking in supplies. So it is no wonder that when Cao Cao's messenger reached Wu's court, it didn't take much convincing for Sun Quan to switch sides and ally himself with Wei. Sun Quan then sent one of his generals, Lu Meng, to conquer Jing province. Lu Meng had his troops hide in disguised ships and easily infiltrated the province's defences, while he was also able to convince the local commanders, Mi Fang and Xi Ren, who were on bad terms with Guan Yu, to switch sides. Therefore, without facing much armed resistance, most of the province was quickly brought under the control of Sun Quan's armies. Guan Yu, who had no choice but to abandon his offensive campaign, tried to retreat toward safety, but gradually his disheartened troops deserted him, and he was ultimately captured and executed by Sun Quan's men. His death benefited mostly Cao Cao, as it created a deep rift between the kingdoms of Shu and Wu, preventing any collaboration between them, and they were ultimately conquered by Wei. Not all stratagems revolve around armies, and not all enemies are defeated on the battlefield. Kings and generals are ultimately humans, and thus have their own vices that can be exploited to cause their demise. One of the best ways to sow discord between two allies is to throw a beautiful woman between them, and that's just what Wang Yun did. Though likely fictitious, the account of Diao Chan in Romance of the Three Kingdoms is rather famous. She is considered one of the 4 beauties of China, and according to the novel, was sent by the Han official to persuade Lu Bu to revolt and kill his lord and foster father, the tyrant Dongo. Wang Yun first invited Lu Bu to a banquet, and after getting him drunk, he called Diao Chan into the room and introduced her as his daughter. Seeing that Lu Bu had fallen for the girl's unmatched beauty, Wang Yun offered her as a handmaid, to which an overjoyed Lu Bu gladly accepted. A few days later, after making sure the general was absent, Wang Yun visited Dongo and invited him to his home for a grand feast. There, Diao Chan danced and sang for the tyrant, who also fell for her charms and took her to the palace as a concubine. Naturally, Lu Bu questioned Wang Yun as to why he had not honored his promise of giving Diao Chan to him, to which the official replied that Dongo had taken her with the intention of betrothing the girl to Lu Bu. Of course, Dongo had no such intention and kept Diao Chan constantly by his side for his own pleasure. One day, the love-struck Lu Bu had the chance to meet with Diao Chan in a romantic one-on-one, with the young girl proclaiming her love to him and telling him that Dongo had violated her. But while the two lovers were in each other's caring embrace, Dongo, who had been searching the entire palace grounds for his favorite concubine, saw them together. In a fit of rage, he picked up Lu Bu's halberd and hurled it towards him, with the young general hastily making a run for his life. Li Ru, an advisor to Dongo, tried in vain to calm the tyrant, and advised him that he shouldn't ruin his relationship with his adopted son and greatest general just for a girl. Dongo was persuaded to forgive Lu Bu for a moment, but Diao Chan twisted the tale, claiming that the general was the one who had embraced her against her will, and that she would rather die than leave her master's side. This convinced Dongo to keep her, and thus sealed his fate. Lu Bu, who had by that time found refuge at Wang Yun's house, was also enraged, and was easily recruited into the plot to kill the tyrant who had usurped the empire. With Lu Bu on his side, Wang Yun set the final trap, a ceremony where Emperor Shen would abdicate the throne in favor of Dongo. As his carriage was approaching the reception hall, he noticed that Wang Yun and the rest of the officials were all armed and was startled. But before he could even make an attempt to escape, Wang Yun shouted, "The rebel is here! Where are the executioners?" And soldiers armed with spears and halberds surrounded the carriage, with one of them wounding Dongo, who called out for Lu Bu to protect him. Lu Bu emerged from the crowd, saying that he was here to deal with the rebel, and plunged his own trident into Dongo's throat, killing him. Thus, the most powerful man in the empire met his demise at that moment. As for Diao Chan, the novel informs us that after Dongo's death, she married Lu Bu and left Chang'an with him, but besides a later cameo, she isn't mentioned again. Because of the volume of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the Sanguozhi, it would be impossible to mention all of the stratagems that are described there in a single video. We just selected some of the most famous and what we thought were more entertaining ones. We hope you liked the video, and keep in mind that if you see a man playing a good chin on top of the city's gates, it's most likely a bluff. More videos on ancient Chinese culture and history are on the way. To ensure you don't miss them, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.